Good morning, all of you. I, Pratiksha, welcome you all to this webinar. I'm excited to introduce Dipali Vora, an ACAM certified professional with more than 8 years of compliance experience. In this webinar, she will provide key insights on enhanced due diligence to strengthen your AML compliance. Join us for an informative session to enhance your compliance strategies and navigate legal challenges effectively. And with that, I'll hand it over to you, Dipali.
Thank you so much for the introduction. So let's quickly begin with the topic. So today we all have gathered here to have more understanding about the enhanced due diligence. But before we dwell into that topic, let's first understand the basics. Now, in UA, we have certain basic rules and regulations related to AML-CFT law, which includes Federal Decree Law number 20 of 2018, Cabinet Decision number 10 of 2019 concerning anti-money laundering and combating the financial of terrorism and illegal organization. Apart from that, we also have Cabinet Resolution number 74 of 2020, which talks about and helps us to implement the screening and targeted financial sanction regulations. In addition to this, we have different zones like ADGM, DIFC. They have their specific rule books which they are required to follow in addition to federal decree law and cabinet decision. Now, the ministry have also come up with various other guidelines specifically for the DNFPB segment, as well as as a whole DNFPB, what they should generally follow. Plus, sector specific guidelines are also available, which could be referred to have more understanding about implementation of the federal decree law and cabinet decision. Now, if I like right now, what you are having a look at is the basic regulations that actually basic rules and regulations that you must follow. Like DNFPB should register on GoML portal, appoint a compliance officer, conduct enterprise-wide risk assessment or business risk assessment. Once that is done, we've understood what kind of risk our organization is exposed to. We will then be drafting the AMLCFT policies, procedures, and documentation. How to practically implement that? Now, having policies, the main intention of having policies is that we are going to implement that in our organization by conducting KYC for natural persons, companies. Once we have completed the KYC, as in we have received certain ID and address documents for our customers, we will then be screening them. Once the screening is done, basis the the results that we have got, we have certain reporting obligations like fund freeze report or partial name match report. Once we don't have, like when we screen and we don't have any match, we can move on to the risk assessment. After the risk assessment, we'll be bifurcating our customers into low, medium, and high, and depend like once a customer is being designated as high risk, we are required to implement EDD for them. How we will do that, what are the documentations, what are the benefits, that is something that we are going to discuss today in detail. So right now you can see a thumbnail, you can scan this particular QR and actually have a look at the complete video of the infographic which I just discussed. You can scan it, go to that particular video, and you can click on save for later. You can watch it at your convenience. Now, let's understand customer onboarding process. So when a particular person wants to have any kind of business with us, maybe services, he wants some services or he wants to have some transactions with us, the first thing that we will do is KYC. KYC as in we'll seek certain documents, ID and address proof. We will screen them, assess the risk of that particular customer. And once the risk assessment is done, it might come to our knowledge that, this particular customer is high risk. So we might have to go, carry out enhanced due diligence for them because they are high risk. Once EDD is completed, we are actually completing the customer onboarding process. But in order to make sure that, the risk associated with them remains the same, we will monitor them on. We will set some rules in our organizations to deal with this specific kind of customers like low risk, medium risk, high risk, how frequently we will monitor them. just open your phone, scan this QR and answer this particular question, and we'll discuss the answers of this question. Actually, today you will have your phone will be used a little more to scan, to answer the quiz. Okay, so we've received quite a lot of responses by now. So the first question: which of the following forms part of the customer due diligence process? So the correct answer is all of the above. Customer due diligence process includes KYC, screening, customer risk assessment. The next question: is GoML registration mandatory for DNFPBs? Yes, it is mandatory for the DNFPBs. So the answer is not no or maybe, it's yes. All of the DNFPBs are mandatorily required to get themselves registered on GoML portal. So let's have a very brief understanding about KYC. So when you onboard a client, now that client could be a natural person or a corporate legal entity. So you need to have certain documents, information with respect to your client, like seeking their ID proof, address proof, understanding their occupation. So this is the information that needs to be captured, okay, in our records. So basically, I would say one tip here would be that we should make sure that our KYC forms are designed correctly so that we capture all of this mandatory information. As a part of the ID proof, one can go for Emirates ID or passport, driving license, or any other government issued document, but that should have a photograph. Address verification could be utility bill that should not be older than 3 months. Now, the same things would be applicable for the corporates also. For corporates, only identification proof would be certificate of incorporation, memorandum of association, articles of association. These are the mandatory documents. Address verification, same utility bill or bank statement could be referred. Apart from that, you also have the option of accepting rent agreement also. Now, one thing to keep in mind when we conduct KYC for the corporate clients is, in addition to the information that we seek for that particular corporate, we will also have to follow the process for collecting the documents for the ultimate beneficial owners. UBO are the ones who are holding more than 25% shares or voting rights in an organization. If you do not find, or there's nobody who is falling into that category, you may look out for the person who is having the controlling rights. And the last option would be considering the senior management as the UBO, but that is only applicable when the structuring is such that you cannot find out a person who is having that kind of controlling rights or shareholding pattern. Only then you will consider the senior management as the ultimate beneficial owner. Now you can again scan this QR to understand complete format, or I would say the complete process of conducting KYC for individuals as well as corporates. What documents to be taken, what is the information that you must have, how you should keep that. That all you will find in this particular video that's available on YouTube. You can scan it and watch it later. The next part of customer onboarding is name screening. Now, name screening will help you to find out whether that particular prospect or your existing customer is a sanctioned person, or they are politically exposed person, or they are associated with a PEP, or there is any kind of adverse media around that person, or any other company which is related to that person regarding financial crimes or corruption, bribery, or anything which is suspicious or that should not be there, or which will be a threat to your company. So by name screening, you will verify. Now, screening is to be done for all of your customers, suppliers, associated business parties, any other third parties with which you are associated. Now, let's understand when to screen. So, we will screen them before we are onboarding them as our customers. If we are carrying out occasional transaction, and third would be whenever there are any updates in the sanction list. Now, sanction list is something which will not remain constant. It will keep on changing. New names would be added, few names would be deleted, or few information related to specific entries would be added, amended. So we have to make sure that whenever such amendments come, we should cross verify them with our customer list. So these are the instances where you must screen. In the past, we had also conducted one webinar for understanding around screening. What are the reporting obligations? When you screen a person, you find a match. If there's a partial match, what report to file, when to be filed, what is the timeline that we need to adhere to? That all you can understand by watching this video. You can scan this QR and watch the video later. The next is customer risk assessment. Now, once KYC is done, we have information with us, we have screened them, we have quite a good amount of information with respect to the customer that we are going to work with. So, after that, we will be assessing the risk of that particular client. Now, customer risk assessment is a very important part of the customer due diligence process because that will help us to understand if there are any associated risk with that particular person, which might be transferred to us at a later date, which is, we might not know at that moment if we skip this part. So it's important that we, when we have got the information about the client, we've screened them, we have a complete profile of that particular person, we must bifurcate them into low risk, medium risk, or high risk, depending upon, the factors like nationality, geography, what kind of transactions they want to, do with us, or how is the payment channel, how are we onboarding them, and after that, we must have a risk-based approach. A risk-based approach means after evaluating all of these things, if we feel that no, I mean, this person is quite risky to deal with, we might, consider them as high risk. And after, evaluation, we feel no, lower medium would be okay for them. Nationality is fine. The business is also in the normal course of and even how the payments are coming in, that is also very safe. So in such cases you can consider that person as low risk or medium risk. But just to let you know, this is purely, I would say written in the law, but depending upon, the kind of the services you are into, the kind of the products you are involved into, these factors might differ. We had conducted one webinar on customer risk assessment and, I would say a pinch of EDD, where you can just have some idea that what could be done in EDD. You can, scan this QR and watch this video later to understand that what are the risk factors. Okay, like say for example, customer risk. So nationality risk, where are they belonging to? So that what could be the examples that would come under each of this particular factor, that you can understand by watching this video. Now, we have understood the customer onboarding process, KYC, screening, customer risk assessment. After completing this, when we bifurcate our customers into the risk category of low risk, medium risk, and high risk, then we will also have to understand that how is, due diligence process related to the risk assessment that we have done. So if a particular customer is low risk, we might do simplified due diligence for them. Simplified due diligence would mean we might just ask for their ID document, verify the ultimate beneficial owner. We would screen them. And monitoring as in how frequently we will verify that the risk is low, low or not, whether it's going to be a yearly thing, 1.5 year or 6 months, how are we looking at, or how are we going to reassess the risk of them? So that would depend upon the risk categorization that we have done. So for low risk, ideally one can go for simplified due diligence. For medium risk, one can go for standard due diligence. Now, standard due diligence, you will inquire for ID document, address proof, occupational details, where are they employed, what is the purpose of the transaction. So this is something that you would identify, or I would say rather verify when you are conducting standard due diligence. You would also set some rule in your policy that how frequently are you going to monitor them. Same as I gave an example for simplified due diligence, 6 months, 1 year, depending upon, as we have written in our policy. The last is enhanced due diligence that would be conducted for high risk customers. And this is the topic for which we have met today. So let's quickly go to that topic. Before that, we have one short quiz. So the first question, for an individual client, which of the following documents are mandatory? So we are required to have their ID proof and address proof in case of standard due diligence. So we must seek those documents when we are conducting their due diligence. For a corporate client, trade license, articles, and memorandum of association are a mandatory requirement. So just having the trade license is not correct. We are required to have trade license or certificate of incorporation, articles, and memorandum of association. So the correct answer is A and B. When should the screening be done? Screening should be done at 3 instances: before onboarding, carrying out any occasional transactions, or whenever there are updates in the sanction list. So the correct answer is all of the above, okay, and not just before the onboarding. So let's understand what is enhanced due diligence. Now, enhanced due diligence is basically the extension of customer due diligence program. When a customer comes in, the first thing that we would do is ask for their address and ID proof. Once those documents are with us, we do KYC, we do screening, we will do customer risk assessment, and after that, we might come to a conclusion that the customer is high risk. So if the customer is high risk, we would then ask for additional documents. That is the additional compliance requirements, or I would say we would ask for additional information around what kind of business they are associated with. We would also try to understand more about the proposed transaction, or we would ask information with respect to source of fund, source of wealth. We would also seek information regarding the associated company which is there. We might seek information, we might seek documents like audited financial statements. We would ask for salary receipts, we might ask for any sale of asset document if that person has a lot of amount in their account, or maybe if it's a cash transaction. So basically, after we have evaluated the risk which is associated with our customer, we might ask for more documentation. It would be an extension of the customer due diligence program. This is also the legal requirement. For all of the high risk customer, we must conduct enhanced due diligence. Now, when is EDD required? EDD is to be performed for all of the high risk customers that we own. When customer risk assessment is done, after we have actually implemented the risk-based approach, wherever we find more risk, we'll be having more stricter controls for those customers. So when we are assessing the risk, and at the end, as per the customer risk assessment module that we are using in our organization, it comes to our attention that customer is high risk, we are going to implement EDD. Now, high risk customers examples could be, after implementing the risk based approach, it could be a politically exposed person, it could be a person who is associated to a politically exposed person. If it could also be the case where a particular customer has some negative media regarding financial criminal activity that that person has done in the past, or it could be bribery, corruption, or any other illegal activity that that person is associated with, after which we might conclude that he is a high risk individual. Apart from that, we will have to conduct enhanced due diligence for all of the customers coming from high risk countries. Now, high risk countries are North Korea, Iran, and Myanmar. So if a particular customer is from these three nationalities, they would be considered as high risk customers. Third, doubt about appropriateness of customers' risk classification and red flag indicators. So these two options would actually be related to each other. For example, you have already onboarded a particular customer. Now, after onboarding, like during the onboarding process, when the risk assessment was done, the risk came up to be as medium. But later on, when the actual working started, deliverables, you started providing the services, later on you realize that no, this person is little different. You observed some red flags. Possibly. So because of that, you might voluntarily want to change the risk from lower, medium to high because you have experienced something, you have seen something. Because of that, you might actually change the risk of that person from lower, medium risk to high risk because there's a doubt. You feel that saying that this particular client is medium would not be correct. So in such cases, you can actually change the risk profiling from, medium risk to high risk after observing certain red flags, or maybe you have certain reservations about a particular client. I mean, example for this could be like, for example, I have signed up a client for audit. I mean, I'm a company who is into maybe accounting and audit. I have signed up a client for conducting audit for that particular client. So initially everything was good. Let's talk about the risk factors: customers, geography, delivery channel, payments, kind of services. Everything was something which was in the normal course of business. Nothing was alarming. So the risk assessment came up to be as medium. After that, once the working started, you realized that the documentations are not correct. After performing that particular contract, you realized that in the past, that particular company has changed the auditors very frequently. Okay. So this could be a red flag because maybe something is wrong and that is why they keep on changing. There is a possibility. So in such cases also at a later date, you may change the risk from low, medium to high. This is just an example. It would differ from industry to industry. Now, once you have identified that a particular customer is high risk, what would be the step that you would follow? As discussed, if a particular customer is high risk, we would start asking for more details. Now, more details would be like more information about that particular company, more information about that particular individual, more information about where their source of fund is coming, where are the funds coming from. Now, just one thing that I would like to share with everybody is that we should not follow a tick the box approach. Merely just getting a document, like say for example, I got salary receipts. Okay, I'm taking that as source of funds and I'm keeping it. That would not be correct. Verification of that particular document is also important. Now, how would you verify? For example, the value of the transaction that a particular person is doing with you is, say, for example, 5 million. But the proofs that are coming to you as a part of source of fund and source of wealth do not match. Or, there are still queries that comes to your mind. So in such cases, verification process is not complete. So it's important that not only just seeking the document, but we should also verify that source of wealth and source of funds in real true sense. Because at the end of the day, we might face some risk at a later date. So to save ourselves also, we should be very prudent when we get into this kind of process where we are required to conduct EDD. So we must verify, check whether that particular document is valid and legal. Now, after that, we might also go for a thorough adverse media and social profile check. We must insist that the first payment must come from a bank account which is in the name of the customer. It should not be any third party or cash transaction. It should come from that particular person's bank account. Every onboarding generally happens with the approval of the compliance officer. But because this is an extended version of customer due diligence, here we need the approval from the senior management as well when we onboard a customer who is high risk. So once senior management approval is received, we would have onboarded that particular customer. Post that, we have to make sure that we are monitoring that particular customer transactions on a regular basis. If you find slightest change or suspicious activity, behavior, transactions happening with that particular client, I think strict action must be taken as per your policy, as per the industry you belong to, as per the risk appetite that we have in our organization. So I would request you all to use your phone again and answer the question. Okay. So the first question. to whom enhanced due diligence will be applied. So EDD will be applied to all of your high risk customers, not for low risk customers. They are low risk customers, so we should not apply EDD by law. But if you want to voluntarily do it because you observe some red flags and you want to convert them from low to high, certainly you can. What are the requirements for conducting enhanced due diligence? So the correct answer is all of the above. Seeking source of fund wealth, we must seek senior management's approval. We must also seek the first payment from their own bank account. So the correct answer is all of the above. Now, say for example, we have already identified a particular customer as high risk, or a prospect is right in front of you. Okay, and you have to begin the onboarding cycle. How will we move ahead? Now we have a prospect. Once that particular person wants to get into business or have some transaction with us, the first thing we will do is KYC. We would seek their address proof, ID proof. We would screen them. We will assess the risk. After assessing the risk, if the customer is identified as high risk customer, now what are the possibilities that a person could be considered a high risk? What would be the factors that would contribute? After adopting risk-based approach, if the politically exposed person, if the customer is PEP, associated with PEP, they are belonging to any tax haven countries or a country where, the AMLCFT regulations are not very stringent. If that person is associated with any sanctioned entity or a company, there are a lot of high value transaction, cash transactions. You come across some adverse media with respect to that person regarding financial crime, corruption, bribery, or any other criminal activity which is affecting the risk, we would be considering that particular person as high risk. So these are the, I would say, not exhaustive list, but yes, this could be considered. This few factors could actually act as a basis for considering a particular person as high risk customer. So if we have observed any of these factors, we will take a risk-based approach and perform enhanced due diligence. Risk-based approach, after that, we would have, taken a decision that, okay, this is a high-risk customer. We now are mandatorily required to perform enhanced due diligence. So how will we perform enhanced due diligence? We will seek additional details, verify the source of funds, source of wealth. Why is that particular transaction being done? We will take senior management's approval. We would also make sure that the first payment is coming from their own account. We would be more cautious in all of our future dealings with them also. Now we have onboarded them, but later on, if we are conducting more and more transactions with them, we are going to be very cautious with respect to the transactions that we conduct with them. How the payments are coming in at a later date also, whether there are any third party involved or not. So we are going to make sure that we will just verify how things are happening, whether it's normal or it's legal as per the law or not. Slightest change, slightest suspicious behavior, we might take an action. But that would be at a later date after we have onboarded a particular person. Now, once all of the documentations is done, the question that we should ask is whether the enhanced due diligence was satisfactory, whether we are satisfied that okay, all of the documents that have come to us are correct, we are satisfied, and now we can onboard this particular person. So when this question is asked, possibly there could be two answers, a yes or a no. So if it's a yes, we would onboard that particular customer with making sure that we are monitoring that particular person on a regular basis. If the answer is no, we are going to reject that particular customer. That is the first option. Or we would have found that particular customer as suspicious. In such cases, we might opt to file suspicious activity report or suspicious transaction report through our GoML portal. I hope the cycle is very clear that we first, we basically onboard the customer, do KYC, do screening, we'll assess the risk. After that, after that, we will look out if there are any red flags, basically. That red flags, not, but any other factor which compels us to actually consider that person as high risk. If that is the case, we would then complete the EDD process. After the EDD process, we would verify that, if is everything okay? Can we onboard? Can we not onboard? If it's suspicious, we might file suspicious activity report or suspicious transaction report. So ideally, this is the correct way in which you would complete the EDD process. If the EDD process is not complete, that particular prospect will not be your client, or SAR, STR will go. So that is how you conclude this entire cycle. You should not leave a particular process in between. We must reach to a conclusion. The idea is that. Now that we've understood when EDD, what are the factors which would contribute, and because of which we will consider a particular person as high risk. We've understood that. How does the cycle work? We know that. In what cases we should do EDD, that also we know that. And what are the things that we should do as a part of the EDD process, that also we are already aware. Now let's understand what role KYC plays in performing EDD. How KYC helps us in performing enhanced due diligence. That is something that we will look at. Now, performing KYC will actually help us to create a foundation with respect to a particular prospect. When we will do KYC, we will have ID proof, address proof, information about that client that will help us to verify, that will help us to screen, that will help us to understand to what particular business that person is associated with, or in what occupation he is. Once this is done, we would screen them. Screening will, if KYC is done, if we have ID documents in place, and if we go for screening, say for example, we got 3 or 4 matches when we did screening. Because we have the ID proof in our hand, it would be very easy for us to identify that whether the person who is, in my office waiting to take any service from me, whether he's sanctioned or not, whether he is matching, whether he's the same person or not. So that way, it will help us to make sure that we are not getting into business with any person who is sanctioned, or, maybe they are involved in some financial crime. That will, in addition to that, if we screen them, that will also help us to identify if they are a politically exposed person or if they are associated with a politically exposed person. If we have KYCs and screening done correctly, risk assessments done correctly, and after that, we come to a conclusion that, okay, it's a high risk. So basically, we are complying with the law also. So that will help us, comply with the rules and regulations which are prevailing in UAE around high risk customers. By screening, by having an ID proof with us, by having the complete information about that particular customer's profile, we will also be able to understand if there are any adverse media. We'll be able to prepare a complete profile, and we'll be able to store that for, for any future reference, because we are also subject to record keeping requirement for 5 years. So that will also be taken care of. So KYC is actually done to make sure that the person that we are onboarding, they are a legitimate person or not, whether this such person exists. It could be a corporate also. Having proper documentations in place, having ID and address proof will help us understand and know the person that we are onboarding. So KYC itself is very helpful, and it's also going to help us to perform EDD if required, because the entire process of customer onboarding is dependent on the KYC that we do. Now, what are the benefits of conducting enhanced due diligence? Now, when we perform enhanced due diligence for high risk customers, now if we look at the process, in certain parts we are adopting or implementing risk-based approach for all of the customers. We screen them, we create their profile. So we are actually understanding the risk which is associated with each of our customers. And because we are understanding the risk, we are going to be very cautious when deciding whether to onboard them or not. So because of that, it is helping us to take informed decisions. It is helping us to mitigate the risk which is associated with money laundering or financing of terrorism. Because of the risk-based approach, we will know that okay, there's some kind of financial risk or financial threat when onboarding a particular customer. The threat could be of our goodwill and reputation also. So by having RBA in place, by conducting EDD because of RBA, that will help us to mitigate the money laundering, financing of terrorism risk. Make sure that our reputation is not affected. This will ultimately lead to your customer loyalty. They will trust you for the activities that you are doing because you are taking proper decisions. You are not getting into I would say, because if we at times, if people decide to go for or onboard a riskier client and later on something wrong happens, I mean, it completely tarnishes the good of and reputation of a company. So having EDD in place, having rules and regulations, adopting risk-based approach is ultimately going to help you to, negate the risk. If you could be a part of any financial crime, you will be saved from that because you will be alerted. Because you are having RBI, you know that, okay, I work with this client, I could get into a problem in future. So maybe you are deciding to stay away from them. So that is going to help you because you're not acting as an agent for that person in any way. So this would be the benefits of conducting enhanced due diligence. The last topic for the day is best practices for implementing enhanced due diligence in our organization. So whenever we begin or when we want to implement EDD in our organization, it would be very important for us to understand the environment in which our company is going to operate. We must document that, understand the risks which are associated in the market where we are providing our services. That would help us to, to understand in which area we need to work more. In implementing EDD, the support from senior management is also very important because we need approvals from them. So it's important that, the management gets involved in that. When implementing enhanced due diligence, we are required to adopt a risk-based approach. Because of that only, we will, bifurcate the customers into low, medium, high. Plus, after reaching the conclusion that, okay, it's a high risk client, uh, after deciding that a particular client is high risk and you are adopting risk-based approach, you will know that which information to ask for. See, source of fund and source of wealth the terms will have lot of things associated with that. To identify what document will help you, what information will help you to complete the entire EDD process will depend on the RBA, the risk-based approach that we implement. We are also required to conduct money laundering and financing of terrorism risk assessment when conducting EDD. Or before conducting EDD, having policies and procedures in place, it is very important that we define our risk appetite. Now, risk appetite is basically where the management says that I'll be ready to take this much risk. Beyond that, I don't want to take any risk. Like, for example, some persons will go and buy an insurance, some persons will not. So they are taking a risk by not buying, and some people are just being safe by buying an insurance. Though that decision is dependent upon the risk appetite that a company or an individual wants to take. Once we have decided that, okay, I'm not going to go beyond this line. So before that and after that, I'm going to enforce some controls. Say, for example, my company has decided that, okay, from now on, we are not getting into any kind of cash transactions. So basically, we are enforcing some control. We are defining our risk appetite. And after defining the risk appetite also, I am actually putting that in my policies also. that would also help in deciding what are the trigger events. Trigger events means, as I said, that I have decided that I will not get into cash transactions. If someday some of your client comes and says that so far we were doing this, but today we want to make all of the payment in cash. So that would be a trigger event. Maybe after that you would conduct an EDD because that's your policy. Or you would offboard that client. That's completely dependent upon the risk appetite a company has. So basically defining or drafting the policies and procedures in such a manner which is actually more helps us to comply with the law. It's very important. One of the best practice would be to have customer acceptance and exit policies. So in what cases you can accept the customer, or in what cases there has to be immediate exit of that particular policies. Customer acceptance would be, maybe you have decided that you will work with all of them, but you will not work with any shell companies. So that is something which even the law says, and that is something that we have also written in our policies. Clearly defining in detail what would be the enhanced due diligence procedure that we will follow in our organization, leaving no room for any kind of questions. So that would also be very helpful. Some companies can also go for softwares which will help them complete, the screening process, or maybe the entire customer onboarding process. And finally, the decision to onboard a particular person, particular as in high risk customer, would completely depend upon the senior management. So these are the best practices in order to implement EDD, having RBA in place, defining risk appetite, controls, customer exit and customer acceptance policies, software implementation, and senior management approval. So let's answer this quiz, the final quiz for today. So there's one announcement that I need to make. So it's very important. It's going to be very beneficial for all of you who are present for the webinar today. Okay. So the question is how KYC helps in performing enhanced due diligence. It will help us to identify the customer. It will help us to make the risk assessment. It will help us to find out if there is any adverse media. So basically the answer is all of the above. The second question is, what are the benefits of conducting enhanced due diligence? So when we are conducting EDD, we are actually adopting RBA. We are managing the money laundering and financing of terrorism risk. And because of this, we are actually making informed business decisions to make sure that our reputation and goodwill is not at stake. So now, in case if you want to have more understanding about the rules, regulations, you can actually log on to our website. You will find publications, articles, videos on YouTube, and infographics. Now, the one important announcement that I want to make today is that if you all can scan this QR, you will actually reach to a page called AML FAQs. All of the queries related to EDD the webinar that we did today, not only that, but any other queries that you have, while implementing the AMLCFT law in your organization, or you have any conceptual doubts, you can actually post your queries on this particular page and you will receive the answer. So I'll just keep this for you all. You can scan it, save this particular, this website, and you can start posting right from now onwards. Also, I would like to thank you all for joining the webinar. Thank you so much. We will send this particular QR after this particular, after the webinar is completed. We will share the PPT that would be available on our website, and this particular logo, everything would be available. So you can actually check out our website as well. Thank you so much.